Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, CEO and founder of the Women's Small Business Initiative, LLC, and an award-winning author. And welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Leslie McIntyre-Tavella. Leslie McIntyre-Tavella has devoted her entire career to building and strengthening businesses and creating environments where talented people can excel. She understood from the beginning that differentiation and consistency are crucial to thriving in a competitive business climate. Leslie launched her first startup organization, the McIntyre Group, 30 years ago and bootstrapped it into a $20 million award-winning company. She is a progressive leader and entrepreneur, one comfortable with collaborating and engaging with C-suite executives in a wide range of industries. After selling her firm and stepping away from the staffing industry, Leslie spent the next year writing a book, Framing Success, a blueprint on how to build a solid foundation for a sustainable, successful business. Additionally, Leslie has launched her new firm, Culpeo HR, an HR consulting firm with the goal to help build businesses better through HR compliance and talent optimization. So without further ado, please help me welcome to my platform, Miss Leslie McIntyre-Tavella. How are you, Miss Leslie?
Oh, hello, Kimberly. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here and to connect with your audience. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm excited. We chatted for a second before we started going, and I'm like, ooh, I cannot wait to talk to you. I love your spirit, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great interview. So, Leslie, before we start diving into some of the juicy good stuff about you, please tell my listeners a little bit more about who Leslie McIntyre-Tavella really is.
Sure. So, very lucky life. I've really had just a great story and a great journey. Came from a very humble background. My mom was an insurance secretary. My dad was a plumber. And I really got this tremendous work ethic from my mom, who always worked 3 jobs. Sadly, she wasn't around a lot, which was a little tricky for, us, but it really taught me the importance of work. And so from a very young age, I was just, very driven to build and, focus on whatever task I had at hand, really turning it into something that was memorable and inspiring. So I started out working when I was 14, and I never stopped.
Wow.
I just was very, really lucky, had some wonderful mentors, and really entered into a really wonderful, business background, really young.
Wow. And, I'm sitting when you're telling your story about your mom working 3 jobs. I mean, that's amazing. And consistently having 3 jobs, sometimes when you hear people say, oh, I've worked 3 jobs, it's usually just here or there. But to be consistently doing that, for whatever amount of years she had done that, that's amazing. And having that type of work ethic, we all hope that it rubs off on your children sometime at some point in life. Well, it definitely rubbed off on you. And
yeah.
The thing that it astounds me is that because your family had such a work ethic, that I'm surprised that they weren't business owners, because when you start to really dive into that, type of work ethic, that usually you'll roll it into something else. But here it is that all that, work ethic definitely rolled into you. And so here you've built an amazing, not one business, but 2 businesses and writing books and so forth. So let's just talk a little bit about the journey that you went through, because obviously, you didn't just jump right in and start the McIntyre Group 30 years ago. So talk about how you got there and what made you decide that you wanted to start a business.
Sure. So, in our family, again, we were kind of a blue-collar family, and we really weren't afforded the opportunity to go to college, or we really didn't even talk about college when I was growing up. And so it was just, you're going to work and you're going to get a job. And lucky for me, again, my mom was quite absent a lot because of the work that she did for us, for our family. And so I was lucky enough to be able to go to my aunt's house, who was a really simple woman, but probably one of the most magical mentors I could ever have in my life. And
Wow.
I really credit her for my remarkable journey and kind of how everything turned out. In fact, she wrote me a letter a day for my entire life until I actually left her house. So she really
Wow.
inspired me and taught me that I could really do anything that I put my mind to. And even, the most menial of tasks, to really do them with such inspiration, to give people an experience where you are making them feel exceptional, and you're giving them a memory and making it memorable. And so this is something I even taught my daughter from a very small age, which is whatever you do it with all of the spirit and enthusiasm and excitement that you can, because you will at some point get noticed. And lucky for me, as I started out, again, in my very, very early days as a clerk typist at a communications company, I did everything with great enthusiasm and spirit, and was, again, lucky to have another mentor in the company, the VP of sales, hear me one day on the phone and say, you know what, come to my office. I want to talk to you about another opportunity. And so this really was kind of my whole journey in business. I just, again, through a series of luck and, hopefully good work ethic and creating an experience that was memorable, I was really able to move ahead in these companies and in these opportunities with these great mentors. So having a mentor is so important to someone who is, aspiring to get into business or do something or, become better at something.
Right. Absolutely. But I'm sitting here just listening to what you said about your aunt. I have never heard of anyone writing somebody a letter every single day while you were still living.
Every day.
While you were a part of her home. I mean, that is amazing. That is a blessing to know that she...
I have to tell you, it was the greatest gift. My only sadness, and I think about it all the time because I used to keep all of her letters. This will make you giggle. Back in the day, she wore pantyhose every day. So she would take out the cardboard sheath that the pantyhose leg was on, and she would save all of them, and that's what I would get my letters on.
Oh my gosh.
Which I'll never ever forget. I mean, she
Wow.
wore a lot of pantyhose, I have to be honest with you. 7
you got
letters,
that right.
7 days. So it was really magical. And every morning on my desk, when I would wake up from the time that I was, probably like 5 or 6 years old, I would have a letter. And she never, ever let me down. And through those letters were just daily words of inspiration and motivation. And they made me such a positive, happy, person who believed that there wasn't anything that I couldn't do if I set my mind to it. And that was really that was the beginning of my success.
Right. I was going to say there's, to have somebody be in your corner like that consistently, and it just to hear that, to share that story, because that's what most people always need, is just to be inspired, to know that they have a purpose, and to be at such a young age and building that, and like I said, it wasn't really about how much money you had or how much education you had, to be told every single day of your life that you're worthy. Boy, if that doesn't sink
Absolutely.
in, I don't know what does, because that is a big part of what people are lacking in their lives, is being just knowing that you're worthy. And then especially when you start to build it and you become an adult, a young adult, and then become a full adult, and then you're out here in the world and you're always around people who are just as talented as you are. in some point they may see more talent, but when you have the opportunity to truly believe in that just that little bit of faith has been put into you to excel, that's how you get started. And, your story is definitely something that people need to hear, because we have so much negativity and, there's so much, afterthought about what it is we can't do or how we can't this and that, especially with technology today. Because I was sitting up there laughing when you said clerk typist. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard that word in a million years. I'm like, I'm getting up there when I hear that word clerk typist. I'm like, nobody knows what that is anymore.
Fly paper. Imagine that. No one's ever heard of that, I'm sure.
Exactly. I'm like, I know nobody's heard that one. That was my first thought, but I was like, wow, because I remember being a clerk typist years ago. So.
Absolutely.
It's just...
And I loved that job and just turned that job into the most, it was just so much fun and so rewarding. And I had the opportunity to work with customers and, talk with them about their businesses and how I could help them. And, that's really what everyone wants, I think, is just a positive experience. Exactly. And I feel that people shouldn't wait for it. I feel like you can really go out and create your own experiences. And I have to tell you, I've often said this, I would really love to do a test, because wherever I go, I always try to create the very best experience that I can by just engaging with people, being a good human, talking with them, speaking their name, looking them in the eye, having great eye contact with them. And I have to tell you, there isn't a place that I've really ever gone to where I've had a bad experience. And I really feel that if people could just be gracious more and utilize, this really simple, thinking, it really is. I mean, I go to Dunkin' Donuts, I get my coffee before anybody else. I've gone into, superstores, and I've had cashiers open up lines for me. It's really just about being great. The power of nice is really something to really think about.
Right, because I was sitting here thinking as you were talking about that, like you said, it's just something so simple to just be nice. And, we live in a world today that being nice is almost like a curse. It's like, wait a minute,
Absolutely, it's true.
Right. It's like, why does everybody have to be so negative? And I love what you said, where you said you have to create your own. You don't have to have somebody have to come up and pat you on the back 24/7 to tell you how great you are or what you're doing. You have to know that within. Right. And every environment, every environment opportunity that you have been a part of, you made sure that was the best opportunity and environment. And it could have been the worst job in the world, but nobody would have ever known that, because your personality just spills out. I mean, like I said, just talking to you, I'm like, ooh, I'm so excited over here. I'm like, I found somebody who doesn't mind being exciting, doesn't mind, enjoying what they're doing and realizing that this is how you find true talented people. So talk about the business climate, because, being a part of HR, having to find new people all the time, bringing in the companies, and especially the way things have been in the last year and a half or so, this world has definitely has taken a turn when it comes to trying to hold on to good talent and talented people. But then people have also realized that, hey, I'm worth a lot more than what you have given me. You work me like hell. You don't give me anything. You don't appreciate me. Talk about how you've seen the change, how things have been affecting people, and then, trying to find true, good, talented people and then making them feel good about the business climate that they're going to be a part of.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the things that managers and leaders miss is that most people don't leave their job because of money. And everyone seems to think that, that's the number one reason. And it's really not. People, it's difficult to leave a job, and it's emotional and it's stressful. And so people don't want to just readily, leave an opportunity. They leave because they are not getting the recognition and the appreciation that they need. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I don't mean to say that it has to be any, people think it's got to be this big fanfare and we have to do all of these things. And no, it's really not that. It's just very, very simple. People want to be appreciated. They want to be recognized. Mm-hmm. They want to be heard, and they want to be seen. And so it really is just a matter of taking the time. And, as business owners, we get very, very busy. And and there's so many things going on, especially this past, year and a half. I've talked to so many leaders and business owners. They really are. They're challenged beyond anything that I've ever seen before in my 35 mm-hmm. years. And I understand that. And so as a business owner, you're in the trenches and there's a lot going on and you don't really step out of the weeds. You get caught in all the day to day and you're just, you're putting out fires and there's so much going on, but you have to really be intentional and you have to step away and out of your business, mm-hmm. not only for yourself, so you can be a good leader and kind of rejuvenate and step back and kind of get your mental clarity, but you have to do that for your people and you have to really step aside and take the time to talk to your people and see how they are and see what they need mm-hmm. and let them know what a great job that they're doing. Because if you really take care of your people will take care of your customers. That's right. And your business will thrive. Absolutely. It's really pretty simple. And COVID was a really huge test mm-hmm. for a lot of companies because mm-hmm. what we're hearing now as we talk to people, they're saying, listen, I'm leaving this company because they didn't care about me during COVID. They didn't care about my mental health. They didn't care about my well-being. They didn't come out and get in front of this and talk to us and communicate with us and let us know what was going on. Mm-hmm. They weren't vulnerable and honest and transparent. And, they forgot about us. And you just simply can't do that. You have to be there for your people.
Absolutely. And then we see a lot of, and I still hear a lot of to this day that, when we had the pandemic going on, we were all shut down for a while, but then we were still able to work and being able to have that flexibility of working from home or working from a different state, a different country. People were in awe. I mean, everybody loved that opportunity of flexibility and they actually felt human for a change. It's like, hey, I can still get my work done, but I can have a life. And people aren't willing, not everybody's willing to go back to that, hustle and bustle atmosphere and having to deal with a lot of nonsense and not being able to truly understand what it means to have life and flexibility after a regular work hour, your regular 8-hour day or whatever the case may be. And some people aren't going back to that regular. I don't want to do 8 hours. I don't want to do 10. I don't want to do 12, 15 or whatever it is in order to be considered, considered to be successful, employee per se, because, we have always had this mindset and that formality of, well, you've got, if you're not working more than 8 hours, if you're not working 10 hours, then you're a nobody. And I think that is the most horrible thing that you can do to individuals who are, your employees, because at the end of the day, you still need these employees, these talented people in order to be a successful business. Mm-hmm. So what have you seen and have heard in that perspective? And do you see things ever going back to so-called normal when it comes to the office environment?
It's so interesting. I've seen a few companies that I've spoken with that are returning to the very same company that they were before COVID, mm-hmm. which is really interesting. I've not seen a lot of this, but these are more of kind of the manufacturing companies, the companies that have been around for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. They have plants and they have facilities on site that have manufacturing people, factory workers. Right. They're kind of going back to the way that they were, and they really didn't miss a whole lot because most of them were essential businesses that stayed open. Mm-hmm. Other than that, we are seeing a huge shift in business. And what really happened during COVID is people rediscovered themselves. Yep. And they rediscovered and reconnected with their families. And they realized how wonderful everything really can be. Exactly. And how, how a 2-hour commute mm-hmm. is just miserable. I actually have a really great friend. For years, he's been a great friend of mine, and he has a very successful business in Manhattan. And I used to talk with him all the time because he has a 4-hour commute every day.
Oh, gosh.
4 hours. And he runs a large marketing company. Really, really successful man. And I used to say to him all the time, man, doesn't that commute just kill you? How do you do it? And he said, no. Oh, no, I love it. No problem. It's no problem at all. You know what? I've been doing it for years. Mm-hmm. It was just second nature to him. Mm-hmm. Well, now COVID came. He's been home for a year and a half. And I said to him a few weeks ago, I said, so when are you going to go back, to Manhattan? Oh, he said, I'm never going back. He said, I don't know how the heck I did that commute. He said, I must have been crazy. I have a beautiful house. I didn't even realize I've been in my pool. Mm-hmm. I've seen my kids. It's just unbelievable. He said, I don't know how I didn't realize that was so awful for me. Mm-hmm. But I think it's because when you're actually in the thick of it and you're doing it, you really don't know any different until you truly experience otherwise. Mm-hmm. Now, he said, we're getting rid of the whole brick and mortar facility. Everyone is going to work remote. My employees are so happy. And I literally have at least 15 hours a week that has been given back to me to do whatever I want to do at that time.
Wow.
It's remarkable, really.
Yeah, it
is.
So
there is a large,
go ahead.
Big shift going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like you said, people had, and we really had no choice. You had no choice but to reconnect with yourself, with your families, with your environment. And, I was trying to make people understand that, being on the road is not as always as luxurious as it sounds, because even, though I have a business, I still work and I'm on the road a lot, and people don't realize that being home is the most beautiful thing that I've been able to experience, being able to work from home. And then, hey, if I got to go out and do what I have to do, I have to do it. But it's just, you start to think about, like you said, how long it takes for you to get up and down the street. I'm here outside of the DC area, so it's always crazy here. So I'm like, I don't care about having to go into.
Sure.
Yeah, you just get tired of feeling like you're constantly stretching your day around, okay, well, it's going to take me an hour and a half or 2 hours of travel to get to where I need to, and it's literally should only be a 20-minute drive, So, it's just all those little things that we take for granted. We finally had the opportunity to open up our eyes. Now, there are some people who still enjoy being in the office environment because they feel they can get more accomplished. But I love how with the technology and everything that we have, that people are literally, and companies are literally being forced to utilize the tools and resources that were always there. Because you had to get everybody out of that comfort zone of saying, well, I got to see you in order to see you get work done. Well, that was crazy. Like, wait a minute now,
It's true. And you really have to trust your people. Mm-hmm. It's funny. My age, it was almost a badge of honor if I worked 12 hours today, 14 hours a day. What we really have to work on now is teaching people how to be efficient. I used to speak with my partner about this a lot because he really was a warrior. I mean, he would work, 10, 12 hours, 14 hours, go home, send emails at midnight. Mm-hmm. And I would say to him, listen, I know that's how you work, and I understand that makes you happy. But, you have to realize by emailing someone at midnight, you now are making them feel obligated that they have to email you back. And we don't want to do that kind of work. We don't want to make our people feel that they have to be connected to our business 24/7. Exactly. That's the great thing about technology. Some young people, they love that. They want to work at midnight. They want to get their work done at different hours. That's okay. But I think we have to really teach people how to be efficient, how to time manage, how to prioritize. And then we really have to trust our people and let them loose to do the work that we know they're able to do, and let them be in an environment where they're thriving and where they're happy.
Exactly, because they will continue to provide what they need. They're going to give them what they need, as an employee, without having to feel like you're being micromanaged. And I think that's where a lot of people have learned that, with this pandemic, as much as some people actually hate it, not being able to get up and move, there was no micromanaging. You really had to perform. You either you're going to perform or you're not going to perform. Like I always tell people, the proof is in the pudding, right? So, you have no room to fake. You have no room to say, well, my team is going to do all the work for me. No, you literally have to get up here and do your job. And I think that's all. The other thing that has stood out for a lot of people is that you're finally going to see how people do stand out and those who don't. But at the same time, like you're saying, that being appreciative is what people really truly look for. It's not always about the money. It is about saying, hey, you don't have to pat me on the back 24/7, but at least appreciate what I do for you. Because like I always tell people, again, at the end of the day, you need them as much as they need you. This business cannot run without people. And, whether it's the people, your employees, Absolutely. Or whether it's the people who are outside of the business that you depend on in order to, keep that business thriving. So what else do you see, or do you feel there are any other changes that are coming down the pipe that we weren't prepared for in the industries of today?
I think the largest challenge right now is going to be for the people that are going to be working remote or partial remote. And I really think that this is going to continue. It's like 73% of employees said that they want some form of remote work. And I think 17% of employees said that if they were forced to go back full-time tomorrow, they would quit. They would give their resignation immediately. So, I mean, this is not going away.
Right.
And we still have so many challenges with COVID and all that's happening. I think that we really have to look at remote work as a very strong future, initiative. I mean, it's going to continue. So we have to put that into into our workplace. But I think that the hardest thing around all of this is, how do you engage people when they're remote, and how do you build a strong culture and really, I talk about MVPs in my book, which is having a mission, values, and a purpose. How do you infuse that into, the everyday world when most of your people are working remote? So I think that's going to be an area that's going to be really challenging. And you know what? People are just going to have to get really creative. I think there probably will be a lot more of remote retreats and remote gatherings where, that's where you can infuse your values and really build your culture. There'll probably be a lot of team building events. But I just think we're really going to have to change the playbook a lot on how we really engage our people. How do we engage a remote workforce? I think that's going to be challenging for a while. And I don't know that anyone has really kind of nailed that yet.
Right.
I think people are still trying to figure out just, what kind of remote work do we offer, and how do we navigate this, and how do we, manage people, how do we manage a remote workforce? But I think that's probably going to be a difficult challenge. How do we really do that?
Right. And I agree. I think it is because, we're still used to that conforming, that same mentality of, well, like I said earlier, you got to be seen in order to think that you're working, and it's going to take some people, some time to get that out of their heads that, people really do feel better about, they don't mind working hard as long as they're in their environment and, want to have some of that little bit of flexibility, because at the end of the day, you cannot control what people do. And I think that's where the problem is that everybody wants to control the individual as well as their environment. And when they're not in that environment, they can't do that, but you can't tell a person, well, you should be sitting at your desk, the whole time. So, okay, so can I get up and go to the bathroom when I'm at home? You can't
Absolutely.
worry. You literally cannot worry about what the individual is doing. I think my thought process always is, hey, as long as the work is getting done, I don't care what you're doing, because I can't see what you're doing. But if the work is not getting done, we're going to know. I mean, it's really that simple.
Absolutely.
It really
I mean,
is
you'll
that simple.
find out so quickly if that work isn't up to par, if people aren't turning in their work as they need to.
Mm-hmm.
So, why is it wrong if someone wants to get up at, noon and they don't have any commitments or meetings? Why is it wrong that they go out for a nice walk, with their dog, or they
Right.
go to their, child's school for, lunch or whatever they need to do? I mean, I think that's what people really want now. They've seen, first of all, I think people have been through a really traumatic time. And I think a lot of leaders really have to keep in mind that they might not have experienced this year and a half of COVID the way that their employees have.
Right.
I mean, I know some people that were in a 300 square foot flat that were not allowed to leave their building for a month.
Right.
And I know a lot of people who've had a 5-bedroom house with a glorious backyard, with a pool, with a neighborhood, with parks where they could walk. So, I mean, everyone has had very, very different experiences through this really traumatic time. And so, I know people who've worked at the dining room table with 3 other people. Kids came home, all bedrooms were being used for offices. People were in their attic, their basement. It's really been rough for a lot of people. Kids home, dogs home, everybody's home. So I think that, sometimes I think the dog was looking at me like, are you really ever going back to work? What are you doing home so much? I mean, I think the dogs were tired of it after a while.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all fun and games for a minute. Right.
Right, exactly. I think employers have to really understand where, the operational reality is of their employees and how they're probably still kind of working through all that has happened, and some have not yet finished. I mean, we're kind of in this uptick, if you will. And I think that I think there's still some things going on. People are having to have their kids home from school, and so it's been really, really stressful.
Right.
And I think during great times of stress, I think people really do completely reevaluate their life. And look how many people have just up and moved. I mean, one of the things we're talking about a lot in our new HR consulting company is the wandering workers, where people literally just got up and said, I'm not living here anymore. Yeah. I'm going to live here now. So, I mean, it's just amazing how much movement there's been. Some people didn't even tell their employers. They just moved. Wow. And, didn't really even think about it until, right. Oh, geez, maybe I should tell my boss I live in Colorado now.
Exactly.
So, there's just a lot going on. People are really now thinking about their well-being more. So I think in the end, it's really going to be a very, very positive thing. And I think people are going to really come out of this feeling good. And doing things that they really wanted to do. This gave people an opportunity to really look at their lives and really look at what's important to them.
Exactly. Well, Leslie, what they need is more clones of you running the companies so they can get it. Okay. Because I'm like,
some
of you, yeah. Well, when I hear you talk, you talk simple common sense, and unfortunately, so there are some people who just don't wear that. They don't wear that hat. They don't understand it. They can only see it from their view, and not realize. I mean, and it's not that you don't appreciate, these people who have these wonderful companies. They give us opportunities to work and make money and take care of our families, but at the same time, it's like you have to be open-minded. You cannot constantly be stuck, 30, 40 years back. You literally have to move with the way things are today in order to maintain the talent that you're getting and to maintain realizing that people are human. And I think that's the big thing that our conversation has really been about, today, that we are all human beings. And, unfortunately, it took this pandemic for everybody to open up their eyes and realize some of their worth, what they're doing with their lives. And is this all really worth it? It's unfortunate we had to go through what we're going through, but it really did and does make you sit back and rethink everything. Because we
Absolutely.
We definitely live in a society where it's all about making that money, and we have generations of today where it's about instant gratification. Everybody wants to make that dollar quickly. They don't want to work, millions of years to get some money, and it's, eye-opening. It really is. And
Absolutely.
But to have somebody who's in the HR field and understanding that, like I said, we are all human. And I think a lot of times that if a company, you may have a good company, but you may be lacking in that HR capacity, that's where a lot of people also will say, I'm just not doing this anymore. So,
Correct.
It's
absolutely.
Just,
yes.
It's crazy, but we're getting close to the end of the show. But I want you to talk a little bit more about what your new firm does, Culpeo. Talk a little bit about this HR consulting firm.
Sure. So Culpeo HR is an HR consulting firm and a talent optimization firm. So basically, the way to break it down is we're all about people and we're all about process. Mm-hmm. We literally want to help companies manage their HR compliance. We do workforce planning. The goal is to reduce turnover and help people with return to work protocols. Those are kind of the initiatives that we're focusing on right now. But we really want to help companies manage their people properly, make sure that they're doing everything right. There's so many new laws that are coming out now. I mean, they're coming out daily. It's just amazing what's mm-hmm. happening in kind of the HR world and all the new laws that are coming out. So we want to help companies really mitigate their human capital risk. And by doing that, we want to help them with their people, and we want to help them create processes that really are sustainable and that will help them really focus on their business, and we focus on the strategy and the process of their business. Mm-hmm. So we also will be doing, because I just can't help it and I love it so much, we're probably going to get back into recruiting again because I love working with people. So we're very likely going to have a recruiting arm as well, mm-hmm. Because it's just so gratifying to work with people and get them new jobs. There really isn't anything better. I think I will always be a recruiter at heart. It's mm-hmm. just it's so rewarding.
Wow. Well, like I said, we need more clones of you. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, like, for those companies who are listening now, okay, reach out to Leslie, okay, because she knows what she's talking about, okay, because it's very important, definitely important. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with wanting to get to the top, as an employee in your company, but we definitely want to feel like we're being appreciated, and you have provided great insight on understanding what that means for those who are sitting back, at home thinking, I need to do something differently. How am I going to do it? Nobody appreciates me. What am I thinking? You're really giving people something to just sit back and realize that you are worthy, but this is how you can do it and still feel that you can reach, your goals and dreams. And of course, the same thing with the companies and organizations that are out there. For those who need that help, definitely reach out to Miss Leslie McIntyre-Tavella, because I'm telling you, I'm sitting here like, wow. If I wish we had met you 20 years ago. So.
Oh, thank you so much. People need to remember that people are the most important assets in their companies, and they mm-hmm. have to take care of them and nurture them and love them. And to all the aspiring entrepreneurs out there, be brave, be humble, and be a life learner. Be open to learning and growing. You're never done learning.
Absolutely. Wow. I was going to say, at the end of that note, there's nearly nothing else I can ask you to say, but could you please tell everybody how they can reach out to you, Leslie?
Absolutely. I can be reached at Culpeo HR. My email is lmt@culpeohr.com. And you can certainly call me as well. My number is listed on my email, so feel free to reach out, and would love to hear from anyone who has any questions or, again, is looking to grow and scale their businesses. Would love to help.
All right. Well, like I said, this has been a phenomenal opportunity to talk with you, Leslie. I really have enjoyed our conversation. And if you have any last words for the listeners, please go ahead and let them say anything that you want.
Oh, thank you so much. I would just say really never close yourself off to the opportunity to learn. And, listen, if you have a good gut, listen to your gut. Gut instinct is very, very important, but it's so important to listen to people around you, and, really open yourself up to be able to grow and flourish. It's really so important. And be memorable, be exceptional.
Exactly.
Put yourself out there. Don't be afraid.
All right. Well, like I said, again, thank you so much for coming on tonight's show. You have just brought a ton of value of content and information. And, like I said, for everybody else, we have truly have understood what it means to have the blueprint and how to build a sustainable business. And it's with people. It is really, truly about people. It's not about just making money. And it always leads me to ask people, what are your dreams? What are you trying to get accomplished? And realize that you can do anything. It's not about how many degrees you have. It's not about just, making money. Because I always tell people, if you're chasing money, you're going to forget your purpose. So,
absolutely.
This conversation tonight is all about that. So if you are ready to sit down and have the conversation with me about your dreams and you want to turn those dreams into goals, you can reach out to me at Kimberly at WSBILC@gmail.com. And of course, if you want more of your resource for success, please donate and support to our podcast. You can go to the website at www.WSBILC.com. And again, we'd like to thank you all for listening to us tonight. We will be back next week with more amazing guests, and be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcast. But until then, enjoy the rest of your evening and good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.